What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the only album by F.L.Y Yungstaz. Basically, this album is called Jamboree, and it came out in the summer of 2009. It's basically only known for one single. That's about as far as they got. They didn't try to promote it with anything else, including promotional singles. They came and went pretty quickly. Very similar to Shop Boys, like pretty much like a lesser version of Shop Boys. They do kind of have like that kind of party dude kind of rock rap type oriented type stuff as Shop Boys. It's kind of basically like a younger brother to that particular type style. It's interesting to kind of get it. They don't quite do rock rap as much, but they are kind of in the similar orientation to Shop Boys. But I definitely like this group and the album that they put out. It's pretty solid. I think I might actually like this one a little bit more than I liked Shop Boys' album. I just would have to say it's just really too bad that they could not capitalize on anything beyond Swag Surfing. 'Cause that's a pretty stellar song. They definitely have like some pretty sheer party vibes on here that definitely has like the context of it. Would have to say that they're from Atlanta, but they have a more focused kind of Atlanta sound than Shop Boys does. It's just kind of more in the focus of like party rap type stuff. To really talk about this, I mean, I do like the sound on here. It's got some good jams, but it's just very short lived. That's the whole thing about this group. They just kind of came and went. They're kind of very similar to Rocco, but even Rocco had more of a career than this group. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know. This is one of those folks that when Biggie says someone's kind of on the milk box missing, this is one of those groups that they just kind of vanish. They don't even have mixtapes apparently, so I don't know if they even did anything. I'll have to look it up to really see. But for the most part, the only central song, the complete only song that's really known by these guys whatsoever is just Swag Surfing. So they are like pretty much the true definition of a one-hit wonder. Now the album, I would have to say that there are some other cuts on this album. It's just I cannot figure out why they did not even attempt to put out something else throughout the rest of the year as far as something that they could have done. There's no promotional singles, no other music videos. It's kind of a straightforward one single album that's just completely it, just in general. And that's just kind of odd and awkward as far as that kind of goes. But yeah, to talk about the single on here, Swag Surfin'. Swag Surfing has a pretty rock rap oriented kind of tune. I would almost think that some people would probably think that this was a Shop Boys song if they didn't listen hard enough. They'd probably think, oh, Shop Boys is back. This is kind of similar to like Party Like a Rock Star or something like that. It's just a very regular kind of night party tune with a straightforward kind of feel towards it. It's just an overall social gem. But the thing about this Swag Surfing song is just a lot of songs on this album sound like it. Like there's songs like Bands and Jamboree, Gotta Be. I would even say Party Time. There's just a good assortment of songs in the first half of the album that sound just like this song. And it's just kind of the fact, I mean, I do like when I mean, I'm not someone who feels like when you get a hit song that you should only have that one variation of it and they shouldn't try to do other variations. But it just feels like there's some clones on here that just kind of have similar energy to Swag Surfing, but it just doesn't quite pull it off as well. But it's not to say this album's bad. Like I said, this is going to actually get a pretty rave score. I'd say this is probably going to get over a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. So I just would have to say there is some good stuff on here. But Swag Surfing's pretty much the highlight. It's a song that, depending upon how much you knew rap music in the late 2000s, you probably heard. Lil Wayne did a freestyle to this song back in 2009 on his No Ceilings mixtape. That's how I kind of found out about it. But just to kind of be able to say this is a pretty hit highlight song out of Atlanta out of the late 2000s. Just because things were kind of quiet. Things were like Gucci Mane and Soulja Boy. That was kind of the orientation around that particular time. I do remember a lot of that sound back in the day. The Dream, Shawty Low, some of those type people. But just to be able to say that this is a good one. But yeah, that basically takes care of the promotion on this album. I'm pretty much serious when I say that there's just not much of anything really promoted wise that this group really did. So they just dropped an album and said screw it, and then that just kind of happened to be it. But the 8 songs that I recommend, there aren't any almost songs, which I almost was surprised by, but I just kind of look after. The 8 songs I recommend would be Swag Surfin', Mr. Lennox, Across the Globe, Prada Walkin', Bands, Sauced Up, Party Time, and Stop Hating '09. So basically a song these guys are pretty party centric, which I definitely like. They have pretty much like these Cowabunga Ninja Turtles type vibes and just kind of party surfer dude type vibes about them as far as that kind of goes. But I just would kind of have to say that Stop Hating '09 is basically like one of the few songs that's just not in like a party mode kind of orientation. I just would have to say that this one's kind of like a buck the haters kind of song. It's a motivational bop. So a nice song on here is Stop Hating '09. This is kind of a buck the haters song. It's definitely a motivational bop, and it's kind of like an on the grind song, and it has some good energy. This has like a real kind of, it's one of the few songs that doesn't have like the swag surfing and kind of party time type energy, but it's just kind of a good highlight. Just kind of has like that kind of hustle song kind of feel towards it. Just that kind of like starry eyed and just kind of more open and this kind of open-eyed and starry-eyed kind of feel towards it, just with a lot of glistening and kind of sparkling kind of energy about it. You've seen some of these promo and or you've seen some of these promo and hustle type songs that kind of have that feel. It's just a motivational bop. I did like the concept that they had a nice song for bucking the haters and that sort of thing. I feel like Prada Walkin' is definitely a similar song to like the stuff that Soulja Boy was kind of doing. Has like these steel drums on there, just like Crank That Soulja Boy from 2007. It's very much a stunting song, very much a summer haze kind of song also. It's also kind of a mild smoking song with some swag. It's kind of somewhat a hardcore song, but I would still listen to it just in a sense of something to kind of smoke to. It's a swag song. It's kind of a song to kind of stunt to in that sort of context. This kind of has that kind of feel towards it. It's a hardcore rap kind of song, but I just look after it. It's a pretty good highlight is for them to be able to get some album cuts despite the fact that these guys just were not charting whatsoever and didn't really attempt to. It's just an overall good hardcore song. I feel like Sauced Up is another swag song. This is a really good one. This has like a very syrupy and hypnotic kind of beat. It's one of the better beats on this album. It's different from like Swag Surfing, where most of the album tried to have songs similar to that, but this is just a good orientation of like some Atlanta rap. It's a swag song, it's a draped up kind of song, and it's kind of a charisma type cut. It's a nice, flashy kind of stunt song. So there are some stunt songs on here. That's one thing that the Fast Life Youngsters can do is have some of these flashy kind of stunting songs. I feel like they're pretty good about that. This is a good orientation to kind of get some of those. But Sauced Up probably has the better beat than Prada Walkin', but Prada Walkin's pretty distinct also. These are just some good ones. I feel like Mr. Lennox is like a very nice shopping mall kind of tune. This is just a breezy kind of shopping day. I would say it's a very whimsical kind of song. This has that kind of whimsical, windy, or just kind of sunny day kind of energy, just in like a nice hop and bop, not any clouds in the sky kind of day in the summer. Just an easygoing kind of strip mall cut. I like the fact that Young Dro was on here. They hit up Young Dro in a point where he was kind of starting to phase out of the mainstream and kind of be less like commercial and that type of stuff. So it was just cool that way out in 2009, 3 years removed from Young Dro's heyday, we get to see him on like a verse like that. So he fit the song pretty well. They just all talk about shopping. Like I want to say that the Lenox Mall is like a mall in Atlanta, something like that. I've heard that name be brought up before, so it's interesting kind of get that. Across the Globe featuring Sammy on the Hook is a nice club bop. This definitely has some flash on here. It's just a regular kind of club night. It's one of the few songs that just feels oriented strictly to the nightclub. Like I feel like Swag Surfing, Party Time, and Bands are all club songs, but this one just has a lot more of a traditional kind of 2000s kind of Loving This Club by Usher kind of synthy kind of bop towards it. Sammy does a real great job on the hooks, just an overall highlight. Bands is another vanilla club song. It's a basic bop for like a good night of stunting. It's very similar to Swag Surfing, just a little bit more brassy and kind of more triumphant. There's definitely some triumphant and kind of dramatically triumphant kind of songs on here. It has that kind of bravado kind of feel towards it, but this is just a good one for that. This is just a more executed or a little bit more flashy version of Swag Surfing, where Swag Surfing's kind of like a lazier, kind of not necessarily mellow, but just kind of more comfortable kind of energy. But Bands is a little bit more triumphant about it. The only song left I have to talk about, which I don't know if I talked about this song, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it again. It's Party Time. This is a real good highlight on here. This is a real nice, peppy kind of summer party tune. Definitely some regular craziness, but it's a good basic social cut. I mean, obviously with this song title being as straightforward as it is, just kind of saying party time. It's just a more kind of presentable version of Swag Surfing, where I would probably go for Swag Surfing and Party Time is like the 1-2 punch or like the immediate songs to go for. But Party Time is just almost kind of like a pop rap tune. It's just like so presentable and just so kind of bubbly and peppy. It's just interesting that they kind of have this vibe when they're kind of more hardcore rap and more kind of like crunchy kind of Soulja Boy and uh kind of more Soulja Boy and Roscoe Dash type individuals. But it's interesting kind of get them on some pop rap. If I would have had to pick the second single, it probably would have been this song or it would have been Across the Globe with Sammy. Those would have been the two ones that I would have chosen for a second single. But that's basically the concepts. They talk about the four songs that I didn't. They talk about the four songs that I don't recommend. Like Jamboree kind of had a bad beat on here. It's just a bad way to kick off the album. It was just a worse version of the song Bands and Swag Surfing. Just didn't quite hold up to that. Gotta Be was kind of like a nice relationship song, or at least it could have been, but I just didn't quite connect with it as much. It was very similar. It's just basically like a song. It's basically like Swag Surfing, except for females kind of being more tied up in that sort of sense, but I just didn't quite connect with that one as much. Just didn't pull it off as well. There's some songs on here that try to do like Swag Surfing, just different orientations in terms of the topic, and that was one that just didn't work. Mounted Up, I didn't really like the production on that one, and then Better Days is like Mounted Up was just like another variation of Swag Surfing that didn't quite pull it off as well. It's the same type orientation as Jamboree, Bands, Swag Surfing, Party Time, some of those type ones gotta be. It just was another stock kind of rehash of Swag Surfing. It just did not quite nearly pull it off as well as Swag Surfing. It was just kind of a poor album cut. This was a bad rendition of trying to be an album cut. And then Better Days was like the introspective kind of thought provoking song that just didn't work that well. I feel like they definitely needed it. Is kind of odd getting them trying to do songs like that when they didn't even get to the second single. It just kind of felt weird. I mean, I feel like they definitely needed more hits before they. It's not to say it's a bad thing that they're trying to be more varietized, but it just didn't pull it off as well just because they just don't have any hits. So this is the kind of thing. They do have good songs, but they just don't have any singles. They pretty much are known only for Swag Surfing. That just kind of happens to be a thing. So I'm going to give this album me liking 8 songs out of 12. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like an 8. So I'm going to give this album me liking 8 songs out of 12. I'm going to give this album like an 8.75 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty damn good. The reason why it doesn't get a 9 is because if I had like a song and a half more, I probably would have given it a 10 or something. But the reason why it's not, and I didn't even give it a 9, is just because there's only one single. I mean, they definitely should have promoted this song more. They didn't even attempt to. They basically, I think, didn't even care. So it seemed like they didn't care as much that they were basically a one-hit wonder and only known for Swag Surfing. They just disappeared, fell off the map, fell off the radar, and then that was completely it for them. They definitely needed something beyond Swag Surfing. They had a good budget. They had big name folks like Sammy and Young Dro on here and some good producers like Nard and B and those type people and Jim Johnson, but they just didn't do it. They didn't push this project. So 8.75 out of 10. The social score I will give a 7 just because apart from Swag Surfing, that's the Mammoth Goliath kind of highlight on here. But I just would say there are some other good songs. Like I feel like Mr. Lennox, I feel like Prada Walkin', Sauced Up, Bands, Party Time. These are all great. This is actually a pretty oriented party album. It's just the fact that it's so hardcore that it just depends on how many people are going to be willing to give it a shot. So that's why it gets a 7. But in terms of the future, there really isn't one just because Fast Life Yungstaz have basically disappeared and it's been 14, 15 years since they've really been around. So that's just kind of the thing. But this is a relatively solid project to look into.